Hey guys, Solacespecs here. I wanted to talk about how to roll your first character in hardcore, in Nemesis, hardcore, whichever one you do. You know, I see a lot of questions on the forums of help, I keep dying around level 60, help, I can't make it to level 70, help, I'm stuck, help, what's the trick to playing Path of Exile on a hardcore character. And you know, really this video isn't so much to brag about how awesome hardcore is, even though if you are playing standard, if you aren't playing hardcore, you really are missing out. I mean, it's so much fun. There's really nothing like it, because it adds a thrill element to the game that you don't get otherwise. So that's really fun, first of all. But second of all, let's say you're playing hardcore and you're wondering, you know, how do I make my hardcore character? And the irony of this video is that I'm making this video about how to survive in hardcore while playing on my character who died in hardcore. So that's ironic. But anyway, I want to talk about how did I make it as far as I did. When I died, I was level 87, and I died because I literally just wasn't paying attention. I mean, I was looking at some other stuff and looked back at my screen and I was like, oh wow, I just died. But let's say you're playing and you're paying attention, you're not an idiot like I am. There is one really just kind of main mentality you should have in making your first character. And honestly, there are several things you can consider when you play Path of Exile hardcore or Diablo hardcore or anything hardcore. There's obviously a lot of questions to answer and things to consider, like should I be a ranged character? Should I be melee? What kind of build should I go? Should it be like a person with a bow? Should it be spectral throw? I mean, there's a lot of things to consider. But the biggest thing you need to think about, and I really want you to think about this through sort of a question: what's more important? Is it better to kill stuff, I guess, like clear a map like this in 10 minutes and have no risk of dying, and to make it to level 90 in a month? Or is it better to clear a map in 5 minutes, in half the time, and make it to level 90 in 2 weeks? Now, obviously, in these circumstances, the second one is best, because, I mean, you know, Solacespecs, you're like, dude, it's not hard. It's like those AT&T commercials. It's like, it's not complicated. That's not AT&T, it's Verizon. The Verizon commercials where it's like, dude, it's not complicated. Obviously, this is better. You know, obviously, it's better to do something in half the time. And so you may be thinking, okay, so I need to go as much DPS as possible so that I can clear maps in 5 minutes as opposed to 10, and I can get to level 90 the fastest. But that actually is not the case. When you are playing a hardcore character, it is almost always better to make your first character as tanky as possible and to sacrifice on the DPS and to go and create a character that can clear maps in 10 minutes as opposed to 5, and who takes twice the time to reach level 90. Now that may sound kind of weird to you, and you're thinking, well, why would I do that? And the reason for that is because when you're playing your first hardcore character, you're ultimately thinking about what is going to statistically increase my odds of survival the best. You know, when you play Path of Exile, you're really playing for two reasons. You're playing to level up your character, and you are playing to find this amazing loot. And creating this level 90 character is great in that, you know, obviously you have a good chance of finding items, finding gear. But again, I want you to think about that previous scenario of the DPS versus the tankiness. Is it worth it to create a character that can clear a map in 5 minutes if every time you play a map, you're always right on the edge of dying? You know, is it worth it to have this super DPS character if every time you play, I mean, your hands are sweaty, you're nervous, you're thinking, oh my gosh, that was a close call, oh my gosh, I almost just died, I've spent 3 weeks on this character, and every time I do a map, I'm on the brink of death. You know, which one's better here? And, you know, I want to encourage you a bit to really consider this tanky character, because, you know, as you play a tanky character, you really remove the stress of playing hardcore, and honestly, you probably end up playing better because there is no stress attached to it. And so the irony here is that many people will create a hardcore DPS character because they're thinking, I want to get gear, I want to gear up my guys, I want to get rich, I want to make a lot of money. And the irony there is that they build that DPS character to clear maps and clear in-game quickly, but they're so squish that they end up dying and they have to roll a new character, and now they just spent the same amount of time they would have spent on a tank character just leveling another new character. And for me, it just makes more sense to me that if you instead level a really beefy character, yes, it'll go a little slower, but your odds of dying are so much lower that you can really play in peace. And you know what? As you're playing, now you have a better chance to actually get this loot because you can clear the maps without having this risk of death. So if I was to kind of summarize what I'm getting at in this video, the point I'm making is whenever you roll your first hardcore character, now I'm not talking about your third one, your fourth one, or your fifth one, or whatever. Whenever you roll your first hardcore character, just do yourself a favor, make him as beefy as you can. Make him as beefy as possible, within reason. I mean, you don't have to go with every life node, you don't have to go with every armor node, you don't have to completely ignore DPS, anything like that. I mean, look at me, I'm clearing this map, I'm literally not even paying attention, I'm just talking to you guys. It is a 66 map, which is pretty much nothing, but I mean, I'm not paying attention to it at all, and I'm clearing everything very quickly. And I can clear a 77 map. You can have the video up, you can check that out. I can clear a 77 map pretty easily as well. And so, with that said, as you roll your first character, just do yourself a favor, make him as beefy as possible. If you make him as beefy as possible, not only will you live longer, but I mean, dude, honestly, you will actually be able to play the game and not have to worry about, am I going to die? Am I on the brink of death? You really just remove the stress of it. And more importantly, you play a beefy, hardcore character so that you can actually find gear that whenever you make your next character, now he can be whatever you want him to be, because you've used your first character as sort of this foundation to farm gear, and now your second, third, fourth character can all be super beefy, super high DPS, because even if they die, it's okay because you always can go back to this character to keep farming gear. And so again, just to clarify kind of what I'm saying, make your first character as beefy as possible, that way you can actually farm gear for your next characters. And so with this guy, for example, real quick, I'll show you how I made him beefy. He's got 9k armor. That comes mostly from his Grace aura, and that's really from just 3 main pieces of gear. That is his boots, which is 300, his chest, which is 1,000, and his helm, which is 500. And then the Grace aura adds 2,000. And so those things plus some passive nodes, like here 24%, and here 30%. Those are the only 2 armor nodes that I have. Oh, and these two 10% and 12% ones. Those things all together give me 9k, which as you can see is 9k, is 50% damage reduction. Then with my 3 flasks that all have armor, evasion, and evasion rolled on them, that puts me up at 37,000 damage armor, which gives me 80% damage reduction. And the second thing is my life. I have 5,600 life, which does not come from having 100 and max, just max life on all my gear. It comes from 65. It comes from 100 there. It comes from 88. It comes from 57. That's it, just 57. 53. That's it. 68. 40. Just 40 life on this ring, and only 35. And these things can roll up to 100. So I really have a lot of improvement on my gear in terms of life. I could probably get my life up to 7k just for getting better life on my gear. But really it comes from what is a common criticism of Path of Exile, and that's the life nodes. People often call it Path of Life nodes because you have to get so many. In this build, I have 30 life nodes. Okay, I have a couple over here. I have about 5 in the middle, and then over through here, I have the remaining set of life nodes, and I already added them up. I have 30 life nodes. It gives you, whatever percent that is. Probably close to 300%. You can probably get by 200 with 250. But again, the reason I did this was, I should have picked this up right here too. The reason I did this was because I was willing to sacrifice my DPS to make my character super beefy and super tanky. And with my DPS, I have 3,500 DPS. Again, you see videos that people have 80,000 DPS. It's stupid unnecessary. You don't need it. I have 3,500. I can clear 77 maps, no problem. 8K on my double strike. Really no issue sacrificing the DPS here. And so, keeping that in mind, you can sacrifice the DPS to get a beefy character. And so with that in mind, if you're somebody who you're getting stuck around level 60, level 70, and you're like, man, I just can't progress, start investing in some tank nodes. Start investing in those life nodes, those armor nodes, and use that to get your first character super beefy, super tank, so that you can farm with them and you can get all the gear, all the money you need to build your next character however you want. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I wish you guys the very best in your Nemesis or hardcore careers. And as always, please leave any comments or questions that you may have. Thanks for watching, guys. See you later.